In this video, we're going to put the spotlight on controversy surrounding Islam Makhachev after his fight with Alexander Volkanovski at UFC 284. Islam Makhachev and Alexander Volkanovski locked horns at UFC 284, and it turned out to be one hell of a fight, which went on till the bell rang after the last round, and later on, Islam turned out to be the better fighter among the two as his arm was raised. However, some people think Alexander Volkanovski should have been declared the winner, and Volkanovski himself thinks that too, of course. And he has even challenged Islam to have another fight with him on Twitter, as he said clearly he won 3 rounds in that fight, so he should have been the winner. While some people accuse Islam of being favored by the judges, some have gone as far as to claim that he was on illegal drugs. Yes, the man has been accused of using a banned intravenous treatment to rehydrate. It has been said that he used these drugs to recover from his weight cut in the lead up to the fight. Dan Hooker, who also happens to be a partner of Alexander Volkanovski, went on Twitter and wrote, "Dumb cunt thinks he can fly to Australia, hire a nurse to give him an IV, and we won't find out. Cheating dog." He later on even confirmed that he was talking about Islam. He further went on to write, "Islam is a cheat. Prove me wrong. I bet you can't. He doesn't cheat. He doesn't win." While referring to the United States Anti-Doping Agency, Hooker wrote on Twitter, "USADA doing fuck all." Giving their statement to The Independent, the agency said under the UFC prohibited list, all IV infusions and/or injections of more than 1 millimeter per 12-hour period are prohibited at all times, except for those legitimately received in the course of hospital admissions, surgical procedures, or clinical diagnostic investigations, and/or those received in competition or out of competition that are determined to be medically justified and within the standard of care by a licensed physician and administered by a licensed medical professional. Without an approved therapeutic use exemption, if a prohibited substance of any amount is administered intravenously by infusion or injection, a TUE is required for this prohibited substance regardless of the volume of the infusion or injection or the circumstances of administration. It's also being reported that USADA also approached Islam Makhachev for his comment on the matter. Dan Hooker has stated that Islam could be banned for 2 years at least for using illegal drugs. After the accusations made by Dan Hooker caught the internet by storm, the fans who were supporting Alexander Volkanovski, they were all over Twitter, and some of them even went as far as to point out injection marks on Islam Makhachev's body. However, all these accusations have been fully denied by Islam's team, as Makhachev's co-manager Rizvan Magomedov went on to strongly deny the accusation about his fighter cheating by using an IV while speaking to MMA Junkie. He said this, "We all know this is completely BS. The guy, Hooker, is a loser. He's salty and just looking for attention, and that's it." IV infusions and injections of more than 50 milliliters per 6-hour period, told to have been banned in the UFC since USADA were implemented into the promotion back in 2015, except for some particular circumstances. And before Dan Hooker made these accusations, Volkanovski joked about Makhachev using an IV before their fight in an interview on the MMA Hour, as he said, "I think he would have been around 178 or 180 pounds. I've heard the guy gets up to around 182. You fill up pretty quick on the IVs and stuff like that. Maybe that's a little shot at him, but you hear whispers." If we go down memory lane, the last UFC fighter who was sanctioned for using an IV was Paulo Costa. The man was suspended for 6 months for the prohibited use of an infusion twice in 2017. Another name that comes to mind is BJ Penn, as he too was suspended for 6 months for using an IV in 2016, but later claimed that he had no idea that the IV use was banned. However, to this day, no clear evidence has been provided to show that Makhachev did anything illegal. UFC's welterweight Matt Brown seems to be of the view that even if Islam Makhachev did take drugs, it would not really have mattered during the fight because it does not work like that. Speaking on the fighter versus the writer, Matt Brown said, "I don't think it actually makes a difference personally. I've dropped pretty significant amount of weights with or without IVs, and I don't think ultimately it does make much of a difference." Matt Brown went on to add that he's always used IVs to rehydrate after weigh-ins, but it was of course before the introduction of the UFC's anti-doping policy. He revealed that he actually learned how to give himself the IV so he wouldn't even need a nurse or other medical professional to help him with the injections. He added, From what I understand, the IVs help you immediately within like a couple of hours, and they rehydrate you quicker than you would just drinking. But over a 24-hour period, it doesn't actually change anything anyway. Now, that's what the scientific community is going to tell you. The research that has been done, that's what it has shown. Your rehydration is basically identical after 24 hours, whether you did an IV or not. So according to a guy who has been using an IV for a long time, it does not really make a difference when you are fighting in the octagon. So calling Islam a cheat after he won the fight is just baseless on Dan Hooker's part. Alexander Volkanovski has managed to retain his spot at the top of the pound-for-pound rankings despite having lost the fight against Islam at UFC 284. While Volkanovski was in an interview with Ariel Helwani on the MMA Hour, he pointed out that Makhachev didn't do enough to replace him at the top of the pound-for-pound list. He said, "Pound for pound, again, I still think I proved that I'm the better fighter and I'm pound for pound number one, but that's not up to me." While talking about their fight, Volkanovski mentioned that if Makhachev was in his division, he would have beaten him easily, saying, "I don't want to be that guy, but if he was just a featherweight in my division, I'd squash him. I'd squash him and it's a walk in the park. I don't need him to be a featherweight." We often hear Islam Makhachev saying that his main goal after coming into the fight against Volkanovski was to become the best pound-for-pound fighter. But according to the recent rankings issued by the UFC, Makhachev is still at number 2, and he does not seem too happy about it. In a video clip on Instagram, he can be seen reacting to the latest ranking as we hear him saying, "I never expected justice and still don't, because we have always seen the attitude towards us in the example of our other fighters. Ankalaev, Peter Yan. The main thing is I flew 13,000 kilometers, defeated their champion there. The referee raised my hand up with my head up, confident with a belt. I came home." After their close fight, Volkanovski tweeted, "Just watch the fight. I definitely think I won 2, 3, and 5. Surprised I didn't get my hand raised. Let's do a rematch anywhere, anytime." So Alexander does not seem to be satisfied with the results at all, and he wants another opportunity to take down Islam Makhachev. Makhachev himself never backs down for a fight, but will the UFC allow it? Has Dana White said anything about another bout between the number 1 and number 2 pound-for-pound fighters? Not yet. Nothing has been said about it yet, but we might see them get to go against each other again, so settle in once and for all.